Daniel Carter was known as one of the most successful businessmen in the city. He had built his company from nothing and turned it into a powerful business empire. His days were filled with meetings, business trips, phone calls, and important decisions. People admired his intelligence, discipline, and determination. Many young entrepreneurs looked up to him as a role model. Daniel believed that hard work was the only way to achieve success, and he dedicated almost all his time to his career. Daniel lived in a large and beautiful mansion in a wealthy neighborhood. The house had everything money could buy, including modern technology, luxury furniture, and a large garden. From the outside, his life looked perfect. However, behind the grand walls of the mansion, Daniel faced a personal struggle that very few people knew about. Daniel had 2 children, Ethan and Lily. Both of them were born with physical disabilities that made it difficult for them to move and perform everyday activities without assistance. Ethan, the older child, was 10 years old. He used a wheelchair and required help with many daily tasks. Lily, who was 7 years old, had a condition that affected her muscle strength, making it hard for her to walk or hold objects properly. Despite their challenges, both children were kind, intelligent, and full of dreams. The children's mother, Sarah, had been the emotional heart of the family. She was loving, patient, and deeply devoted to her children. She spent most of her time caring for them, encouraging them, and making sure they never felt different from other children. Sadly, Sarah passed away after a serious illness a few years earlier. Her death left a deep emotional scar on the family, especially on the children, who missed her warmth and constant support. After Sarah's death, Daniel felt lost and overwhelmed. He loved his children, but he did not know how to handle their emotional and physical needs alone. He believed the best way to care for them was by providing financial security and professional support. He hired therapists, nurses, and private tutors to make sure his children received the best care and education possible. In his mind, he was doing everything a responsible father should do. However, Daniel's busy work schedule kept him away from home most of the time. He often left early in the morning before his children woke up and returned late at night after they had already gone to sleep. On weekends, he was usually attending business events or traveling for important deals. Although he loved his children deeply, he struggled to express his emotions and connect with them personally. He convinced himself that his hard work was for their future and comfort. To manage the household and ensure his children were properly cared for, Daniel hired a housekeeper named Maria. She was a middle-aged woman with a calm personality and gentle voice. Maria had several years of experience working with families and caring for children with special needs. She was recommended by a trusted friend, and Daniel hired her after a short interview. He appreciated her professionalism and reliability. Maria quickly became responsible for maintaining the house and assisting with the children's daily routines. She helped them get ready in the morning, prepared their meals, and made sure they attended their therapy sessions and online classes. She followed the schedules created by doctors and therapists very carefully. Daniel noticed that everything in the house ran smoothly under her supervision, which allowed him to focus fully on his business. Even though Maria spent a lot of time with the children, Daniel rarely paid attention to how she interacted with them. To him, she was simply doing her job. He never asked about the children's emotional well-being or their daily experiences. He only checked reports from doctors and teachers to make sure their progress was stable. Ethan and Lily respected their father and understood that he worked hard. However, they secretly wished they could spend more time with him. They often talked about the memories they had with their mother and wondered if their father would ever sit with them, play with them, or listen to their stories the way she used to. They never complained openly because they did not want to add more stress to their father's busy life. Daniel sometimes felt a quiet emptiness when he walked through the large hallways of his mansion late at night. The house was filled with luxury but lacked warmth. He would occasionally look at family photographs and remember the days when Sarah was alive and the house was filled with laughter. These memories made him uncomfortable, so he buried himself deeper into his work to avoid thinking about his loneliness and grief. He believed that time would heal everything and that his children would understand his sacrifices when they grew older. He trusted that providing them with the best medical treatment, education, and living environment was enough to make them happy and secure. Without realizing it, Daniel slowly built an emotional distance between himself and his children. While Daniel continued focusing on expanding his business empire, life inside the mansion quietly followed its daily routine. The children relied heavily on Maria's support and care. She remained patient, attentive, and quietly dedicated to her responsibilities. Daniel rarely noticed the small but important changes happening within his home, believing that everything was under control and perfectly managed. He had no idea that one unexpected moment in the near future would challenge his beliefs, open his eyes, and change his understanding of family, love, and responsibility forever. Every morning inside the quiet mansion followed almost the same routine, but for Ethan and Lily, each day came with its own challenges. The house was large and beautiful, yet for the two children, it often felt lonely. Their rooms were filled with medical equipment, wheelchairs, special beds, and therapy tools instead of toys like other children had. Life was not easy for them, but they had learned to accept it quietly. Ethan woke up early every day. He could not get out of bed on his own, so he waited patiently until someone came to help him. He had learned to be strong at a very young age. Even though he used a wheelchair, his mind was sharp and curious. He loved reading books about science and space, and he dreamed of becoming an inventor one day. Sometimes he imagined creating machines that could help people like him live freely. But on difficult days, when his body felt tired and heavy, his dreams felt very far away. Lily was younger and more sensitive. Her disability made her movements slow and painful. Simple tasks like holding a spoon, tying her hair, or walking a few steps could take great effort. She often felt frustrated when her body did not listen to her. Lily loved drawing and music. She liked to hum soft songs while coloring pictures, even when her hands shook. She missed her mother deeply and often kept one of her mother's scarves beside her bed for comfort. The absence of their mother was something that never truly healed. Sarah had been their greatest support. She celebrated even the smallest progress, whether it was Ethan moving his wheelchair by himself or Lily taking a few steps with help. After she passed away, the house became quieter. The children felt her absence in every corner of the mansion. Her gentle voice, her laughter, and her comforting presence lived only in their memories. Their father loved them, but his love was mostly silent and distant. Ethan and Lily understood that their father was busy and tired. They never complained or asked too much from him. They tried to be good children so they would not cause him stress. Still, deep inside, they wished he would spend time with them, talk to them, or simply sit beside them for a while. Most of their daily interactions were with Maria. From the moment she entered their lives, things slowly began to change in small but meaningful ways. Maria treated the children with patience and warmth. She did not rush them or make them feel like a burden. When Ethan struggled to move his wheelchair, she waited calmly and encouraged him instead of pushing him. When Lily dropped something because her hands were weak, Maria smiled and helped her pick it up without showing frustration. Maria spoke to them gently, like a mother would. She listened to their stories, even when they talked slowly or repeated themselves. She remembered their likes and dislikes. She knew Ethan loved stories about space and Lily enjoyed music. Sometimes, while helping them with their routines, she shared small stories from her own life, making them feel less alone. The children also attended therapy sessions every day. These sessions were tiring and sometimes painful. There were moments when Lily cried quietly, and Ethan clenched his fists to hide his discomfort. Maria stayed close during these moments. She held Lily's hand and encouraged her softly. She praised Ethan for his effort, reminding him how strong he was. Her words gave them courage when they felt weak. Despite their struggles, Ethan and Lily tried to stay hopeful. They believed that one day things might get better. They supported each other in their own way. Ethan often helped Lily with her schoolwork, and Lily cheered for Ethan during his therapy exercises. Their bond grew stronger because they understood each other's pain. At night, when the house grew silent, the children often felt lonely. They wondered if their father knew how hard their days were. They wished he could see their efforts, their fears, and their small victories. Sometimes Ethan would look at the door, hoping his father would come in and say goodnight. Most nights, that did not happen. Still, life continued. Days passed, routines repeated, and struggles remained hidden behind the mansion's walls. The children carried their pain quietly, unaware that their lives were slowly being shaped by someone who cared for them deeply. What seemed like simple daily care was actually building something powerful, something that would soon change everything in ways no one expected. That afternoon was supposed to be just like any other day for Daniel Carter. He had an important business meeting scheduled in another city, and he left his house early in the morning without seeing his children. His mind was full of numbers, contracts, and plans for expansion. Family matters were pushed aside, as usual. He believed the meeting would take the entire day, maybe even run late into the evening. But fate had other plans. Just a few hours into the meeting, things took an unexpected turn. The investors disagreed on major points, and after a long discussion, the meeting was suddenly cancelled. Daniel felt frustrated but also relieved. For once, his schedule opened up unexpectedly. Without much thought, he decided to return home. It was still early afternoon, a time when he was almost never at the mansion. As his car moved through the familiar streets, Daniel felt a strange sense of restlessness. He did not know why, but something felt different. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was exhaustion from years of non-stop work. He checked his phone, saw no urgent messages, and leaned back in his seat. For the first time in a long while, he was heading home without a clear reason. When the car stopped in front of the mansion, Daniel noticed how quiet everything looked. The gates opened slowly, and the large house stood silently, just as it always did. He expected the usual calm atmosphere. In his mind, Maria would be following the routine, and the children would be resting or attending their therapy sessions. He entered the house quietly, not wanting to disturb anyone. As he stepped inside, something unusual caught his attention. He heard soft laughter. Daniel froze. Laughter was rare in this house. Especially during the day. The sound did not come from the living room or the children's bedrooms. It came from the back of the house, near the old family room that was rarely used. Curious and slightly confused, Daniel slowly walked toward the sound. With every step, his heart beat faster. He could not explain why, but he felt nervous, almost like he was entering a place he did not belong. As he reached the hallway, he heard Maria's voice. It was warm, cheerful, and full of energy, very different from the calm, professional tone she used around him. He also heard Ethan and Lily's voices, filled with excitement. Daniel stopped just before turning the corner. He decided to watch quietly. From where he stood, he could see part of the room. What he saw made him hold his breath. The room was completely different from how he remembered it. The curtains were open, letting sunlight fill the space. Colorful papers, drawings, and simple handmade decorations were spread across the table. Ethan was sitting in his wheelchair, smiling widely. Lily was beside him, focused and happy. Maria was on the floor with them. Daniel had never seen that before. She was not standing or giving instructions like a caretaker. She was sitting at their level, laughing with them, clapping softly as Ethan completed a small task. Lily was holding a paintbrush, and although her hand trembled, Maria patiently guided her, encouraging her with gentle words. Daniel felt a shock run through him. His children looked different. They looked alive. Ethan was confident, explaining something excitedly, his eyes shining. Lily was smiling in a way Daniel had not seen in years. There was no fear or sadness on their faces. They were relaxed, comfortable, and joyful. Daniel realized something painful in that moment. He had never seen his children like this before. Not during rushed breakfasts. Not during short conversations late at night. Not even during therapy sessions. This version of them was completely new to him. He noticed small details that made his chest tighten. Maria praised every small effort. She celebrated tiny successes like they were big achievements. When Lily's hand grew tired, Maria did not rush her. She simply waited. When Ethan struggled, she encouraged him instead of stepping in too quickly. Time seemed to slow down for Daniel as he stood there, unseen. He felt like an outsider in his own home. A deep sense of confusion and guilt began to rise inside him. He wondered how long this had been happening. How many moments like this had he missed? Daniel thought he was providing everything his children needed. The best doctors. The best equipment. The best house. But standing there, watching quietly, he started to question himself. Was that really enough? For the first time, Daniel did not step forward or announce his presence. He stayed hidden, watching the scene unfold. He was afraid that if he moved, the moment would disappear. That laughter would stop. That warmth would fade. He had no idea that this unexpected early return was about to change his life completely. What he was seeing was only the beginning of a truth that would shake his beliefs, challenge his choices, and force him to face what he had been avoiding for years. Daniel remained frozen in the hallway, his hand resting lightly against the wall as he continued to watch the scene unfolding in the family room. The sunlight pouring through the wide windows created a warm glow around the children and Maria. It felt like he was watching a different world, one that existed inside his own house but had somehow remained hidden from him for years. Maria stood up slowly and moved toward a small table placed near the window. On it were several objects Daniel had never noticed before: colorful flashcards, handmade charts, soft exercise bands, and small educational toys. He frowned slightly, wondering where all these things had come from. He clearly remembered approving expensive therapy equipment, but these simple tools looked homemade and personal. "Okay, Ethan," Maria said cheerfully, placing a small puzzle board in front of him, "let's try this new one today. Remember, slow and steady." Ethan nodded with determination. Daniel noticed how carefully his son moved his hands, concentrating deeply as he tried to fit the pieces together. His movements were slow and sometimes shaky, but his expression was filled with focus. Maria sat beside him, not helping directly but offering gentle guidance. "You're doing great," she said softly. "You're much stronger than last month." Daniel felt a sudden tightness in his chest. He had never heard about this improvement before. No doctor or therapist had mentioned it. He realized that Maria was measuring progress in ways that medical reports never showed. Meanwhile, Lily was sitting at a small easel near the corner of the room. She was painting a bright picture filled with flowers, birds, and smiling faces. Her hand trembled as she tried to hold the brush steady. A few drops of paint fell onto the floor, but instead of getting upset, Maria simply smiled and handed her a cloth. "Art is not about perfection, Lily," Maria said warmly. "It's about expressing your heart." Lily giggled softly and continued painting. Daniel had rarely heard her laugh like that. The sound felt unfamiliar yet beautiful to him. He suddenly remembered how Sarah used to encourage Lily in the same gentle way. The memory hit him like a wave, bringing both warmth and pain. Maria then did something that completely surprised Daniel. She carefully helped Lily stand up using support bars fixed near the wall. Daniel leaned forward slightly, his eyes wide with concern. He had always believed Lily's walking practice should only be done during professional therapy sessions. But Maria's movements were careful and confident. She supported Lily patiently, guiding her step by step. Lily's face showed effort and discomfort, yet she did not look scared. Instead, she looked determined. "One step at a time," Maria whispered encouragingly. "I'm right here with you." Lily managed to take 2 slow steps before losing balance slightly. Maria gently held her, preventing her from falling. Instead of showing fear or panic, Lily smiled proudly at her small achievement. Daniel's heart pounded heavily. He had never witnessed Lily's therapy in person. Seeing her struggle and succeed at the same time stirred emotions he had kept buried for years. He suddenly realized how much strength his daughter carried every single day. Maria clapped softly, celebrating Lily's effort. Ethan also cheered from his wheelchair, his voice filled with excitement. The room echoed with happiness that felt simple but powerful. Daniel noticed another surprising detail. On one side of the room, there was a small shelf filled with photo albums, drawings, and certificates. Curious, he leaned slightly to get a better view. He recognized many of the drawings as his children's work, but he had never seen them displayed like this. Each piece seemed carefully preserved and respected, as if their efforts truly mattered. Maria then gathered both children near the table and handed them juice and snacks. She sat with them, not as a worker, but almost like a family member sharing a peaceful moment. She listened carefully as Ethan explained his dream of building a special wheelchair that could climb stairs. She nodded proudly, asking him thoughtful questions that encouraged his imagination. Daniel felt a deep sense of shock and guilt growing inside him. He realized that while he had been busy building skyscrapers and business partnerships, someone else had been building his children's confidence, dreams, and emotional strength. He suddenly noticed how comfortable the children were around Maria. They spoke freely, laughed openly, and showed their true personalities without fear. Daniel wondered when he had last seen them behave so naturally around him. The answer made his heart sink. As he continued watching, Daniel slowly began to understand something he had never considered before. Care was not only about medical support or financial security. It was about patience, attention, and emotional presence. Maria was giving his children something he had unknowingly failed to provide. The realization felt heavy and overwhelming. He leaned back against the wall, struggling to process everything he was witnessing. His perfect belief that money could solve every problem was beginning to crack. Still, Daniel did not enter the room. He remained hidden, silently observing the powerful bond forming between Maria and his children. He had no idea that what he had just witnessed was only a small part of a much deeper truth, one that would soon reveal sacrifices he could never have imagined. Daniel did not leave the hallway right away. What he had just seen stayed heavy in his mind. But what shocked him even more was what he discovered later that same day. It happened quietly, without drama, yet it changed everything. After Maria took the children back to their rooms for rest, Daniel finally stepped forward. He walked slowly through the family room, his eyes scanning everything carefully. He noticed the small tools again, the handmade charts, the colorful papers, and the simple therapy items. Something about them felt personal, not official or expensive. They were not the kind of things doctors ordered or companies supplied. Curiosity pushed him to look closer. He picked up a notebook lying on the table. Inside were handwritten notes. The pages were filled with careful writing, small drawings, and dates. Maria had written down Ethan's progress, Lily's struggles, and small achievements that no medical report had ever mentioned. Notes like "Ethan moved his hand faster today," and "Lily stood for 10 seconds without fear," were written with pride and hope. Daniel's throat tightened. These were moments he had never known about. As he walked further, he opened a small cabinet near the wall. Inside were more supplies. Therapy bands, learning cards, art materials, and even small toys. None of them looked new or expensive, but they were clean, organized, and clearly used with care. Daniel realized something unsettling. He had never approved the purchase of these items. That was when the truth slowly began to form in his mind. Later that evening, Daniel asked the house manager about the extra items. The answer surprised him even more. None of those supplies were paid for by the household budget. Maria had never submitted any receipts. She had never asked for extra money. Daniel felt his heart sink. He waited until the children were asleep and then found Maria in the kitchen, quietly washing dishes. She looked tired, her shoulders slightly bent, her hands rough from years of work. Yet her face was calm. "Maria," Daniel said gently, "where did all the therapy tools come from?" Maria froze for a moment. She slowly turned around, her expression nervous. She hesitated before answering. "I bought them myself, sir," she said softly. Daniel stared at her, shocked. "Why would you do that?" Maria lowered her eyes. "The children needed them," she replied simply. "Some things help them more when they practice every day, not just during therapy sessions." Daniel felt a strange mix of emotions rise inside him. "But why didn't you tell me?" he asked. Maria took a deep breath. "I didn't want to trouble you," she said honestly. "You already do so much for them. I didn't think it was right to ask for more." Her words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He learned that Maria often stayed late after her working hours to help the children practice. She came early in the mornings to prepare exercises and lessons. Sometimes, she skipped her own meals to save money so she could buy better art supplies for Lily or special tools for Ethan. She never complained. She never asked for praise. She never expected anything in return. Daniel felt ashamed. He realized that while he measured care in money and schedules, Maria measured it in time, patience, and love. She had given his children something priceless without ever mentioning it. As Maria spoke, Daniel noticed her voice tremble slightly. She shared that she once had a younger brother with a disability. She helped raise him after their parents passed away. Caring for Ethan and Lily reminded her of her brother, of the promises she once made to herself. "They deserve a chance to feel normal," Maria said quietly. "They deserve to feel loved." Daniel could no longer hold back his emotions. His eyes filled with tears, something that had not happened in years. He realized how wrong he had been. He had trusted systems and money, but he had ignored the human side of care. That night, Daniel sat alone in his office, unable to focus on work. He thought about all the missed moments. All the laughter he never heard. All the struggles his children faced without him by their side. Maria's sacrifices opened his eyes. She was not just a housekeeper. She was a silent guardian. Someone who had stepped into the role he had unknowingly abandoned. Daniel understood that this discovery was not meant to shame him, but to wake him up. The walls he had built around his heart were beginning to break. And for the first time, he felt ready to face the truth about himself, his children, and what being a real parent truly meant. What he did next would decide the future of his family forever. That night, Daniel Carter sat alone in his private office, but for the first time in years, he was not thinking about business deals, profits, or company growth. The large glass windows behind him showed the shining city lights, something he once found motivating and powerful. Tonight, they felt distant and empty. His mind was filled with images of Ethan and Lily laughing with Maria, their faces glowing with happiness he had never noticed before. He loosened his tie and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. His thoughts were heavy, moving slowly through memories he had avoided for years. He remembered the promises he made to his wife, Sarah, during her final days. He had promised her that he would always protect their children and make sure they lived safe and happy lives. At the time, he believed working harder and earning more money was the best way to keep that promise. Now, he was no longer sure. Daniel slowly opened one of the drawers of his desk and took out an old photo album. It was covered with a thin layer of dust, showing how long it had been ignored. As he flipped through the pages, he saw pictures of his family from years ago. Sarah was smiling warmly, holding baby Lily in her arms while Ethan sat beside her, laughing happily. Daniel was in those pictures too, but he noticed something that made his chest tighten. In most photos, Sarah was the one connecting the family, standing between him and the children like a bridge holding everything together. After Sarah passed away, that bridge had quietly disappeared. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering the day she died. He remembered standing beside her hospital bed, holding her weak hand while she struggled to speak. Her voice was soft but clear when she asked him to stay emotionally close to the children. He had nodded quickly, promising her he would. But deep inside, Daniel had been terrified. He did not know how to replace her warmth or patience. Instead of learning, he buried himself in work, believing success could protect his family from pain. He now realized how wrong he had been. For the first time, Daniel allowed himself to feel guilt fully. It was painful, but it felt honest. He thought about Ethan waiting quietly for his father to notice his progress. He thought about Lily missing her mother's comfort and finding it in Maria instead. The truth felt sharp, but he knew he could not ignore it anymore. Daniel stood up and walked toward the window. He watched the busy streets far below, where thousands of people rushed through their own lives. For years, he had been one of them, chasing success without stopping to ask himself what truly mattered. He had built an empire that impressed the world, but he had failed to build strong emotional connections with the two people who needed him most. He began asking himself difficult questions. When was the last time he sat with his children without checking his phone? When was the last time he asked them how they felt instead of asking about their medical progress? When was the last time he simply listened to them? He could not remember. The silence in the room felt heavy, but it also gave him clarity. Daniel finally understood that love could not be replaced by money, professional care, or expensive treatments. Love required presence, patience, and attention, things Maria had given freely without expecting anything in return. Daniel felt a deep respect growing inside him for Maria. He thought about her tired hands, her quiet sacrifices, and her genuine dedication. She had done more than follow instructions. She had given his children confidence, hope, and emotional strength. She had helped them feel valued in a world that often treated disability as weakness. As Daniel reflected, he also realized something about himself. He had been running away from his grief. Losing Sarah had broken him more than he ever admitted. Instead of healing, he chose to hide behind work because it was easier than facing his emotions. He convinced himself that being financially strong was enough to protect his children from pain. But now he saw that emotional absence created a different kind of pain, one that slowly built distance between hearts. Daniel returned to his desk and looked at his busy schedule displayed on his laptop. Meetings, travel plans, and business conferences filled every day for the next several months. He stared at it for a long time before slowly closing the screen. For the first time, those plans no longer felt important. He knew change would not be easy. His business demanded his attention, and stepping back could risk his success. But another thought entered his mind: what was the point of success if he lost his connection with his own children? Daniel took a deep breath, feeling both fear and determination. He realized that he still had time to rebuild his relationship with Ethan and Lily. He could not change the past, but he could shape the future. He wanted to hear their laughter, understand their dreams, and become a father they could trust emotionally, not just financially. That night marked a turning point inside Daniel Carter. His heart, which had been closed for years, slowly began to open again. He was no longer thinking like a businessman calculating profits and losses. He was thinking like a father who finally understood the true cost of emotional distance. For the first time in many years, Daniel felt unsure about his next steps, but he also felt hopeful. He knew that the hardest conversation of his life was coming soon, one that would test his courage, honesty, and willingness to change forever. Daniel had spent the entire evening in quiet reflection, but the next morning, he knew he could no longer remain distant. The emotions he felt, guilt, admiration, and a deep sense of awakening, pushed him to finally confront the reality he had avoided for years. He wanted to understand everything: the sacrifices, the care, and the love that Maria had quietly poured into his children's lives. He found Maria in the kitchen, preparing breakfast for Ethan and Lily. The soft clatter of dishes and the faint aroma of toast filled the air. She looked up, surprised, but did not show any sign of fear or nervousness. Daniel, usually a commanding presence, felt unsure. He had never had a conversation like this before, never one so personal, so necessary. "Maria," he began slowly, I need to talk to you about the children." Maria wiped her hands on a towel, her eyes calm but observant. "Of course, sir," she replied. Her voice carried no tension, only patience, as if she had been waiting for this moment in her own way. Daniel took a deep breath. "I saw you yesterday," he said quietly, "with Ethan and Lily. I saw how you helped them, encouraged them, and spent time with them. I don't know how to say this, but I didn't realize," his voice faltered, and he looked down, ashamed. Maria tilted her head, waiting for him to continue. "I didn't realize how much care, attention, and love you were giving them," Daniel admitted. "I thought I was doing enough by providing for their needs, doctors, therapy, everything they could have, but I see now that there's so much more. You've been giving them something I couldn't, something I've neglected for years." Maria's expression softened, but she remained humble. "Sir, I only wanted to help," she said gently. "The children, they need patience, love, and guidance every day. I've been through something similar in my own life. My younger brother was disabled, and I promised myself I would always help children like him feel safe and valued. Ethan and Lily remind me of him." Daniel felt a lump form in his throat. He had never imagined the depth of Maria's personal connection to his children. It was not just professional duty, it was personal, almost sacred. He realized how much courage and selflessness it took to care for them day after day without recognition or reward. "You mean, all the tools, the charts, the things I found yesterday, you paid for them?" he asked, incredulous. Maria nodded. "I wanted them to have everything they needed. I didn't want to burden you with it. I thought, if I could make even a small difference in their lives, that would be enough." Daniel felt a wave of emotion he could barely contain. He had spent years trying to buy safety, comfort, and progress for his children, believing that was all that mattered. But here was someone who had given them not just care, but hope, confidence, and joy, freely, selflessly, and wholeheartedly. I don't know how to thank you," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "I've been so blind. I should have been here, with them, guiding them, loving them, as Sarah wanted me to. I failed them, Maria. And I failed her." Maria placed a hand on his arm, gently, reassuringly. "Sir, you're not failing them anymore. You've realized what they need, and that's the first step. Love and presence can heal things money never could. You can still be the father they deserve." Daniel looked down at his hands, feeling both shame and determination. "I want to try," he said finally. "I want to be there for them every day. I want to understand their struggles, celebrate their victories, and support them, not just financially, but emotionally." Maria smiled softly. "Then you will. Children notice love more than money, more than rules or schedules. You just have to be present, patient, and honest with them. They will feel it, and they will respond." For the first time, Daniel felt a sense of clarity he had never experienced. He realized that caring for his children was not about controlling their lives or ensuring perfection. It was about being there for the small moments, the laughter, the struggles, the quiet victories. He thought about Sarah's final wish and how he had failed to honor it fully. Now, he understood what she had meant. He could still make things right. He could still build the bridge that had fallen between him and his children. As Maria continued her morning tasks, Daniel finally smiled, not the proud smile of a businessman, but the hopeful, vulnerable smile of a father ready to learn, to change, and to love deeply. He knew this conversation was only the beginning. There would be challenges, awkward moments, and mistakes along the way. But for the first time, he felt capable of facing them. He also realized one more thing: he was not alone in this journey. Maria, with her quiet strength and unwavering devotion, was a guide and partner in helping him rebuild the emotional life of his family. And most importantly, Ethan and Lily would feel the difference. They would finally know what it meant to be truly seen, truly loved, and truly supported. That morning, Daniel made a silent promise to himself and to his children. He would never again allow work or distraction to replace his presence. He would become the father they deserved. And in doing so, he would honor the love Sarah had given and the sacrifices Maria had quietly made for years. The hardest part was over. The rest, he knew, would be a journey, but one filled with hope, connection, and the kind of love that could transform a family forever. The days that followed marked a new beginning for Daniel Carter and his family, though he did not realize it at first. Change did not happen overnight, nor was it easy. The mansion, once a house of routine and quiet efficiency, slowly began to feel alive with warmth, laughter, and movement. Daniel knew that rebuilding relationships with Ethan and Lily required patience, effort, and humility, qualities he had neglected for too long. From the very next morning, Daniel decided to be present. He woke up earlier than usual, determined to spend time with the children before work. For the first time in years, he helped Ethan with his wheelchair exercises, holding the straps and encouraging him with words of praise. He walked slowly alongside Lily as she practiced her steps, catching her carefully whenever she wobbled. Maria watched silently, offering gentle guidance but giving Daniel the space to take an active role. The children were cautious at first. Ethan would glance up at Daniel nervously, unsure if he was truly ready to be involved. Lily sometimes clung to Maria's hand, hesitant to let go. But Daniel's efforts were consistent and sincere. He spoke to them softly, asked questions about their day, and listened, truly listened, for the first time. He laughed at their small jokes, celebrated their achievements, and shared stories about his own childhood. Slowly, the distance that had built over years began to shrink. Daniel also took steps to change the household routine. He reduced the number of business trips and rearranged his schedule to be home in the afternoons. He attended therapy sessions with the children, not just as a spectator, but as a participant. He asked questions, helped with exercises, and even learned to use some of the specialized equipment. The children began to notice the difference. Ethan smiled more freely, showing his father his progress. Lily's laughter grew more confident, filling rooms that had been silent for too long. Maria, who had carried the weight of the children's daily care for years, felt a quiet relief. Daniel's involvement did not diminish her role, instead, it strengthened the family's bond. She noticed the children glowing with happiness, seeing their father truly invested in their lives. Maria's guidance had taught Daniel the importance of patience, empathy, and attention to detail. Now, he could use those lessons to build a deeper connection with his children. One afternoon, Daniel organized a small activity in the garden. He set up a makeshift obstacle course for Ethan's wheelchair, guided Lily through a series of stepping exercises, and even joined them in playful games. The children were excited and thrilled, laughing uncontrollably at their father's clumsy attempts. Daniel realized that these moments, though simple, were priceless. They were building memories and trust, something no money or status could ever provide. Over time, the mansion transformed. It was no longer just a place of comfort and luxury, it had become a home of emotional connection. Walls that had echoed only with silence and efficiency now carried laughter, conversations, and even the occasional playful argument. Family photos, drawings, and handmade projects filled the hallways, proudly displayed, not as decoration, but as evidence of love, effort, and growth. Daniel also took steps to acknowledge Maria's dedication. He formally recognized her contributions, not as an employee, but as a valued member of the family. He ensured that she had the support and resources she needed, and he openly expressed his gratitude, which Maria had never expected but deeply appreciated. The children, too, began to see Maria not just as a helper, but as a trusted guardian and mentor. Months passed, and the changes became permanent. Ethan developed new skills and confidence, inspired by the presence and support of his father. Lily's progress in walking, drawing, and expressing herself flourished under Daniel's attentive guidance and Maria's continued support. Most importantly, the emotional bond that had been absent for so long grew stronger each day. Daniel often reflected on his journey. He understood that wealth and success meant nothing without love and presence. He had learned that being a parent required more than providing financial security; it demanded patience, attention, and an unwavering commitment to emotional connection. One evening, as the family sat together, Daniel watched his children play and laugh, their faces glowing with happiness. Maria stood nearby, smiling quietly. Daniel felt a profound sense of gratitude, not just for the lessons he had learned, but for the opportunity to rebuild his family. He realized that true wealth was not in possessions, titles, or power; it was in love, presence, and the bonds they had nurtured together. For the first time in years, Daniel felt whole. The house, once silent and empty, now carried the warmth of family. And as he held Ethan's hand and helped Lily take a few steps, he knew that the journey they had begun together, though challenging and painful at times, was creating a life filled with hope, love, and a happiness that no money could ever buy. The story of Daniel, Ethan, Lily, and Maria became more than a tale of wealth or success. It was a story of redemption, human connection, and the extraordinary impact of care and love. In the end, Daniel understood that the richest people in the world are not those with the most money; they are those who give their hearts fully, creating lives that matter, and families that thrive.